Hello and welcome back to Watercolor School. This is week 4 and we're adding a couple of new items in, a straw and an old toothbrush and a fine tip Sharpie. So this is an ultra fine point, but a fine point would work as well. Today we're going to be doing some seascapes and some line and wash, and I'm going to show you how you can create a really balanced perspective in your landscapes and seascapes just by using the idea of the horizon line and the rule of thirds. So your horizon line needs to be either in the top third of your painting or the bottom third of your painting, and then you're going to have a nice balanced composition. You can see I'm taping off the edges of these pages, and I'm placing this line into the bottom third of my page. And I'm using my white Crayola marker and just scribbling a circle, and this is going to be my sun in the sky, and it's going to be a sunset. And I'm taking my Kmart flat brush and just wetting the background with some plain water. And then when it's nice and wet, oh, by the way, this is the smooth side of paper I'm working on, not the textured side. Bring in your china plate and find a nice blue for your sky. So this looks quite a nice blue. I quite like the pale blue as well, so I'll bring some of that in. And you want to mix them up, activate them, wake up your paints so that they're going to be a nice consistency to work with. And I'm going to add some crimson into the horizon line, as I like to do with my skies. Now I'm building up the pigment by just adding a little bit more paint into each of those puddles. And the consistency is it's reasonably thick. So I'm going to just wash in some sky, and you don't have to worry too much around that white circle, which will be the sun, because if you've covered it with white Crayola, it's going to resist the paint. And in the sky, I like to do some lines that are a little bit on the diagonal in both directions, just to give the sky a little bit of drama. Now I'm coming in and intensifying that blue, and you can see the way I'm putting in some almost wavy lines in there. And it's blending together, and as you know from our last lessons, watercolour always dries lighter. So while it's wet, you have the opportunity to play with it. And remember, this was working wet on wet. Now I'm going to clean up the sun a little bit with a bit of tissue and get any of the blue paint off that area before I start drying it. So I'm drying it with my hairdryer, and I'm going to slowly remove that horizon line tape, and just pull your tape off low to the table and slowly. And I'm just going to clean up that top piece of tape. That's staying on the spine at this point because I'm using the masking tape to reinforce the book a little bit. Just dab that off with some water and then dry it with a paper towel. And now I'm bringing in a paper towel and pulling out some clouds. And then getting a dry piece of paper towel and blotting. Now I'm bringing in the horizon line and putting it halfway across that line that we've just created. And this is providing what will be the sea. So this will be the area of white space that creates a very sun-kissed sea. And I want to create some sand and a little bit of a river coming in from the sea into the beach or onto the beach. So I'm picking out some ochres and sort of orangey yellow colours that I think might work well for sand. And just intensifying the colour a little bit more. And now we're going to start on the beach. And for this, I'm going to use the edge of my flat brush to create lines going across. Flat brushes are great for landscapes. And using the brush on its side this way creates nice straight lines. Now I'm leaving some area underneath where the sun is, which will be the sun's reflection and will also be the river coming in from the sea. Now I'm going to just add a little bit more of that brownish shade and bring that in as well. And I'm using the flatter end of my brush rather than the point and starting to fill in the shapes. And I'm going to bring in some of the other colours here and there, just like I did with the sky, so that it's not just one flat colour. It has a mixture of colours. And just take care at the edges there that you keep those nice fine areas where you use the tip of your brush. Now I'm going to dab some of that colour into the sky so that I have the colours moving all around my painting. It just gives a more harmonious look. And just adding pure water to fade them out. Now I'm bringing in a stronger version of each of those colours and adding a little bit of shadow underneath each area there in the centre. And then drawing some of that colour out to the edge in lines and just dabbing it around. And this gives some definition to that shoreline. And now I've got a really strong pigment there, and that's going to be something I can drag through the paint. And this creates a lot of interest for the viewer. Dry that off when you're happy with it. And now I'm going to mask off the sky and the white water because I want to do some speckling techniques with the toothbrush and with my paintbrush as well. So I've got a wet toothbrush. I'm bringing in some of that lovely orangey ochre colour. And I'm going to use my fingers to flick it on, and that gives quite a broad splash. And now I'm going to use my paintbrush, bringing in a slightly darker colour again. And I'm going to tap it off, and this produces much finer splashes. And I'm going to dry that off again and then peel off that horizon line. Now we're not finished yet because I would like to create a headland in the background so that we sort of have a point of reference of some perspective. So now the tape is going on in exactly the place where I put it the first time. So it's covering up all of that sea horizon. And now I'm bringing in a really nice dark brown and adding lots of black to it because I want this to appear to be in the distance, and this is going to create a headland with some hills. So I'm just going to start by using the tip of my brush and using the brush vertically and then filling it in. And what this does, it creates the illusion of trees or undergrowth on that hill. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So just tapping in lots of things that look like little stripes at the moment. And these are going to turn into hills with trees on them. So now I can fill that in. and then bring my brush up close to those marks and just soften the edge so that it gives the illusion of some trees. Just smoothing that out a little bit and adding a bit more to the left-hand side to balance it out. So now we've created a setting sun with 2 headlands, a sparkling sea, a river coming into the beach, and a foreshore scene with the sand. Now I'm going to dry that off and remove that tape. And that's the last of the tape that we'll need to use for masking, because now I want to put in a little boat in the foreground, just resting on the sand near the water. And I'm using the same colours that I used for the headlands, but it's a much thicker version of that colour, so it reads as quite dark, which is what I want. Just drawing in a simple banana shape for a boat. And you can put a few little details like where the rollocks go that take the oars and things like that, or just leave it quite simple. And now I'm adding the shadow underneath the boat with a more watered down version of that colour and making the shadow match the shape of the boat, which is what I would do if I was painting a boat in the water too. This time it's just resting on the edge of the sand. Now I'm bringing in a paper towel and I want to do some masking because I want to add some more splatters to the foreground. So there's more detail closer to the front of the beach there. So I'm tapping that colour off with my finger and that gives me some broad splatters. And then when I bring my end of my paintbrush in, it gives me some fine splatters. And I'm going to do that on both of the front sides of the beach. That just gives us some detail. And now for the reveal, I'll take the tape off and you can see the completed painting. So using that masking tape is a really easy technique because you get some beautiful solid crisp lines and it makes painting so much easier. And there's our little seascape finished. Now the next technique is line and wash technique, and I've already been experimenting with different sketches using a paintbrush and some black ink. And you can see how you can get different results. You can soften the paint in the background and just use the lines as an outline. But we're going to do something a little bit different to this technique today, which is using splashes, and that's going to inform as to where our line and wash drawing goes over the top. And this is the technique I'm going to show you today. This is splashing using a straw to blow the paint across your page and create these incredible splashes that you can then use as your jumping off point for your design. So I think this would make a great design for leaves, which is what I'll do today, or you could use flowers and just make it a really loose, abstract, floral or botanical. I'm adding a lot of water till it starts to pool on my plate. So you want really runny paint for this because if we're using a straw and it's textured paper, we need it to move across that paper. So it has to be runny. So I'm putting a good pool of paint there and using a straw just to blow shapes through the straw and blend out the paint. And I'm going to use a second little blot of orange paint down the bottom. You can see me blowing that through the straw and it just creates these cool shapes. It's very loose and abstract and I like this technique. I've used it on a lot of my projects. Now I've used an orange to begin with. I'm putting in blue, and if these two meet, they will create a brown. I'm okay with that because it's a botanical piece, or it's leaves at least that I'll be doing. So I don't mind a bit of brown in there. You could use red and yellow, you could use blue and yellow, you could use blue and red. Any of those colours won't produce the brown, but I liked the brown in mine because I think it was a nice earthy tone with the orange. So another puddle, this time of the blue, and I'm putting this down the bottom of the page. And you want to wait for this to be completely dry before you get on to the next step. So I've got some copy paper or printer paper here, and I'm going to sketch my leaves out on the paper first. It's roughly the same size as the other paper. And so it's going to give me an idea of where that design might sit. Now with this technique, you're not trying to match up the leaves to the splashes or anything like that. With this technique, you are complementing the lines versus the splashes of colour. And it's quite an abstract look. Now these are just simple leaf shapes. So I'm going to do the same version, and it doesn't have to be exactly alike. You can create something a little bit different as you trace it onto your splashes. And if you had the regular Sharpie rather than the ultra fine tip, it would work equally well with this technique. The shapes would show through much more clearly. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add weight to these shapes so that the background and the foreground balance each other out. At the moment you can see much more of the splashes than you can of the lines. And as I show you the technique of adding weight, you'll see how everything comes into balance. You can see here there are some darker lines, so we're going to add weight to those lines now and create more interest. So one way to add weight to the lines is to just give more details to the leaves. So I'm putting in a centre vein and then some veins off that centre point. And this is a quite abstract drawing of a leaf. It's not intended to be realistic or lifelike. It just needs to read as a leaf. So I'm going to go around each of the leaves adding that centre vein and then the veins coming off that centre vein. And this is going to start pushing the lines forward because now the background is the most prominent part of the piece. So I'm adding some hatching. So hatching is small lines close together, and this is often used when we're doing shading, when we're sketching. So hatching with a Sharpie is easy to do. And I'm just going to add those lines wherever I think the leaves need to pop forward a little. And you can add whatever designs you like inside the leaf. You could have some Zentangle type lines. You could have repetitive lines inside the leaves. If you didn't want to put the veins, you could make them decorative leaves. But you can see as I continue to add the hatching and to strengthen up those lines, that the balance of the background and foreground is starting to come together. So just continue with whatever design you choose until you're happy with the result. And that's looking about right now. So here's our 2 pieces we made today. Join me again next week for lesson 5, where we'll be doing some colour mixing. I look forward to seeing you then. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.